I don't know if I can be politically correct in answering this question. I would just say I don't think any athlete wants to peak at high school. I think that's not the aim. And I think there was a question that came up in the chat I saw earlier about, an attrition in girls' sports. There's a lot of attrition rate. And I think what we're doing here is we've got to look at the bigger picture. We've got to say school sport is important, yes, but exercising, getting kids to understand the importance and the benefits of exercise, in my opinion, far outweigh the long-term benefit for what exercise and sport can ultimately do. So, I mean, most of the schools have high performance centers. They all talk about it, but to me, when we look at it from a performance perspective, you see very few of those people that play first team sport go on to play club sport, and or even play professional sport. Sorry, I'm going to mention Gary Kirsten. I know he gives a wonderful talk, and he tells all the parents in the talk to stand up, and you sit down if you ever participated in any representative sport. And of course, at the end of this, everyone's sitting down. He's standing up because he says, okay, so there's only one person that's represented their country in a sport here, and that's obviously him. And I think that the analogy that he gives is incredibly strong, because we have these ideals as parents that we want our school kids to be elite sportsmen. The reality is they love sport at high school, but there's very little flow on. And to me, especially in South Africa, it's one of the reasons why we have such a big attritional rate, is because we focus on the outcome far too early. New Zealand doesn't have this. New Zealand, as a rugby nation, they get bigger numbers as you get higher up. So when you look at sort of high school level and then into club rugby far exceeds the number of high school rugby sides. If you look at it in South Africa, it's totally the opposite. So our numbers in primary school are as big as they're ever going to get. In high school, they get less. And in club, I mean, that's why our club system is really struggling, because I think our high schools are focusing too much on the performance aspect and on that first year.
But I think I'm going to play devil's advocate here, because the difficult part, while that might be our feeling, is that if one school has a high performance center and is pushing it, and players get into provincial teams, it's really difficult to get into any form of provincial or representative teams the older you get. And it probably is, we need to look at those systems and revisit them, because I think that is a big problem. So that's why kids are specializing early, because you want to make that under 13 provincial team, because if you don't make that team, to get in at under 15 is really difficult, and under 19 is virtually impossible. So that is one of the reasons I think why schools and kids and parents are pushing, is because I think that whole system of trying to go professional or to try and take your sport as far as you can is quite flawed. So I think it needs a whole rework by sporting bodies. And then I think a number of schools are trying to look at it and trying to balance it. And if they have a multi-sport athlete or an athlete that is in a number of different sports or different levels of games, so first team and provincial and whatever, that they are trying to protect those athletes. And that's sort of something we are trying to get a lot more involved in, is trying to protect those athletes. Make sure that they're not overtrained, not overreaching, and going to get that catastrophic injury that rules them out. So I think if schools are going to persist with those high performance, and I don't see anybody putting aside their first team rugby squad and trying to get them to do as best as they can, we just need to make sure that the protection and the preventative measures are there to try and protect the athletes.